Okay. Wow. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Right. Hmm. Chooses your family. No real life.
Oh God, why did everyone tag me in this? What did he do? What? It's that rat's nest on your head. We are live! Clear jets, bucko! It makes you look pale. Look what now. My blood is hotter than a worm on an Arizona seatbelt. Did you look in the mirror? That looks like a wig. Did you looked in the mirror, he says. Are you okay? Do we need to call somebody? I thought you were well, I mean, it's a little gross. Well, I want you guys in my blood. It's the worst color I could ever see. I can find the burns, a candle be explained. It's just... Are you kidding me? That looks even worse. I like the wig. I'm like a new dreams come true. I haven't told you yet. Oh God, why did everyone tag me in this? What did he do? What? It's that rat's nest on your head. And we are live! Clear jets, bucko! It makes you look pale. Look what now. My blood is hotter than a worm on an Arizona seatbelt. Did you look in the mirror? That looks like a wig. Did you looked in the mirror, he says. Are you okay? Do we need to call somebody? I thought you were well, I mean, it's a little gross. Well, I want you guys in my blood. It's the worst color I could ever see.
We're on a mission to get more money in the hands of more women and everyone else who has historically been left.
Nurses are laid off. Now, some would blame that on the plummeting birth rates. Others would blame that on senior citizens not being able to afford proper care. But others would also say that the reason for the layoffs is because the medical system is absolutely destroyed in a dumpster fire. Whether that dumpster fire was created from the greed, corruption, fraud, or the Federal Reserve could be anyone's guess. But either way, you guys, I have Jack. Nobody special finance here to try to help us figure out what's going on and whether or not that this could get worse. And if you guys like what he has to say, come on over to his channel. right here on YouTube. Nobody Special Finance. This is my buddy right here. And you guys, we are doing a video to accompany this video on his channel with Steward Healthcare. So when you're done watching this, definitely go over to his channel and check that out. And before I begin and before we jump into these recent layoffs, Jack, how are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, Travis. Thank you again for having me on. And thanks for telling me about this story. We found some cool stuff while we were digging around in this yesterday.
Yes, some interesting questions like birth rates, senior healthcare expenses. I thought it was greed, corruption, fraud. I mean, what the heck is going on? Let's look at a few of these headlines announcing thousands of struggling CarePoint Health could lay off 2,600 employees, which is obviously a ton of employees. When we go down, because I'm more interested on why the layoffs, but a little bit of a backstory. CarePoint Health could lay off more than 2,600 employees effective December 12th, according to notices filed with New Jersey regulators this week. Proposed cuts would impact workers across 3 different hospitals. So this is impacting 3 hospitals, 859 workers at the Bayonne Medical Center, 843 workers from the Christ Hospital in Jersey City, and 900 workers from the Hoboken University Medical Center. Now, a spokesperson for CarePoint said in a statement that the 3 local hospitals, and this is what I'm interested in, are not facing any imminent threat of closure, and no final decision regarding layoffs has been made at this time. And they go on to say essentially that the reason for these layoffs, Jack, is because of daunting financial challenges. In addition to that headline, this headline states Steward Healthcare will lay off more than 1,200 workers in Massachusetts. The bankrupt health system will lay off workers at the end of the month as it prepares to close 2 hospitals in the state. So this one is noting hospital closures. One bullet point right here. News of the cuts come just a day after a federal court approved Steward's plan to close the facilities, which Steward said are losing money and have low patient volumes. Steward attempted to find a buyer for the hospitals during a months-long marketing process. However, the system said it received no qualified bids for the properties. Before I go back to you, Jack, Texas Children's Hospital to lay off 1,000 workers. That is a massive amount of people, you guys. 5% of workforce. A couple of the bullet points here. Despite being a nonprofit, the renowned Houston-based, that's my local city, Houston-based hospital, which is affiliated with Baylor College of Medicine, has found itself in a financially challenging situation. Full details about the financial impact have not been disclosed. Here's what has been announced. The hospital, which operates in 120 locations across Texas and globally with a primary presence in Houston, employs approximately 20,000 people. Now, Houston Children's Hospital has attributed the need for layoffs to a combination of factors like low patient volume, again, financial challenges, and number 3, delay in opening a new Austin campus. Jack, having read that, what do you believe some of these financial challenges and daunting financial obstacles that they're facing? And do you think any of these hospitals are at risk of being shut down?
So let me address the last part. Absolutely, I think a lot of hospitals are at risk of being shut down right now. We're actually seeing a lot of hospitals, especially in Massachusetts, have been shut down just in this last year because of Steward Healthcare, one of the names that you mentioned there. Now, it's interesting. Let's talk about these 3 because you talked about CarePoint in New Jersey, you talked about Steward Healthcare, and then you talked about Texas Children's Hospitals. Let's talk first about Steward Healthcare. We've covered this one on DNN quite a lot. You, me, and Melody over there, we've talked about this one. If we can share my screen there, the daunting financial challenges facing Steward Healthcare, I think, has less to do with things going on in the medical community, and probably more to do with this picture here. This is CEO Ralph De La Torre's $40 million yacht that he bought shortly after Steward Healthcare signed a massive sale leaseback agreement with the real estate investment trust called Medical Properties Trust, or MPW is their stock ticker. Now, Medical Properties Trust now owns the buildings, and Steward Healthcare rents the buildings, so they sold the buildings to them for millions of dollars. The ownership of Steward Healthcare paid themselves hundreds of millions in dividends off of that sale, which of course tens of millions went to buy Ralph de la Tour's yacht here. And ever since then, all of these hospitals that Stewart operates that are owned by Medical Properties Trust have been going bankrupt. Because where the hospital used to own the building outright, now they have millions of dollars a year in rental payments that they have to make to this real estate investment trust on top of their standard operating budgets. And so these hospitals have just slowly bled to death after being strip-mined and looted by Stewart Healthcare's management in a sale leaseback agreement. This is a very common strip mining, looting, predatory tactic that private equity firms use. This is the same thing that's bankrupted Red Lobster, besides Red Lobster's disgusting food. But they passed a big sale leaseback agreement with their franchises, and one by one, Red Lobster restaurants have gone belly up. So as far as Stewart Healthcare, there's no outsized medical thing happening. They just looted the company, and now they're going bankrupt. And by the way, the Stewart story, they don't have any money to pay their vendors. They're not paying their doctors, but they do have millions of dollars to hire private intelligence firms and spies to conduct false flag operations against the short sellers that are targeting Medical Properties Trust. That's something we've also talked about on DNA, and I have something coming out on that topic shortly on my own channel. So that's Stewart Healthcare, all right? Now, before we started recording here, I had actually never heard of the CarePoint story. Funny you should mention that. But while you were talking, I did some quick digging into CarePoint, and I found this article in NJ.com. CarePoint Hospital issues 2,700 layoff notices. Now, this is from 2019. This story is a few years old, but looks familiar, right? Layoffs at CarePoint hospitals. And it's funny you should mention Stewart Healthcare and CarePoint, because as I read through this article about all the financial troubles at CarePoint hospitals, I came across this, besides the stupid pop-up that I'm going to close. When CarePoint Health purchased HUMC, which I believe is Hoboken United Medical Center, they also purchased the Christ Hospital and the Bayonne Medical Center in 2011, the same hospitals you just mentioned about the layoffs. It sold Hoboken and Bayonne properties to Medical Property Trust of Alabama in a leaseback deal. The same exact corrupt sale leaseback thing that Stewart Healthcare did with Medical Properties Trust that has bankrupted their hospitals. This CarePoint outfit in New Jersey did the same thing with Hoboken and Bayonne properties. So now they're having to pay these big rental payments on top of their operating budgets, and they're just slowly bleeding out cash until there's nothing left. And the executives at CarePoint, I'm sure, paid themselves handsomely for that deal. Meanwhile, doctors, nurses getting laid off. So that's CarePoint. Now, the third one that you mentioned, Texas Children's Hospital, that one is a little different because that one wasn't bought out by a private equity firm. There was no sale leaseback agreement involved there. But that doesn't mean there's nothing suspicious going on there. And I found that this one in the Loan Institute, hospitals behaving badly, UPMC and Texas Children's spending draws scrutiny. And the interesting thing here, because Texas Children's Hospital, they're laying off 1,000 nurses, right? Well, when you scroll down here in this article, they say Children's Hospital layoffs. UPMC, not the only hospital receiving attention for layoffs amid high CEO pay. Texas Children's Hospital, nonprofit, announced last month that they're laying off 5% of their workforce, estimated to be about 1,000 people. They're saying they're reducing their executive leadership team and plan to cut executive compensation this year. Of course, that's a good course correction, but too little too late, because their CEO, Mark Wallace, he paid himself $8.8 million in 2022, the most recent data we have available. This nonprofit children's hospital, the CEO is making $8.8 million a year. They're laying off nurses. About 4.7 of this, 4.7 million of that compensation was bonuses. I don't know what bonuses and incentives they're triggering that are resulting in millions of dollars in payouts to the CEO, but it can't be that hard to hit if they're laying off 1,000 people while simultaneously meeting these bonus milestones. But the thing that really jumped out at me, Travis, and I could not believe this when I read it, the hospital has committed $65 million to be the title sponsor of the Houston Open Tournament, part of an effort to grow its regional, national, and international brand, according to the CEO. All right, now, okay, first of all, $65 million to sponsor a golf tournament. What? $65 million? These golf tournaments are cleaning up. But what do you think this nonprofit hospital treating children, having doctors and nurses on staff, or growing the regional and national, international brand via golf sponsorship? That's what I don't understand. How could they possibly argue that there's any kind of a return on investment in this $65 million ad spend on a freaking golf tournament? And I kid you not, here's the website for the Houston Open. There it is in the upper right, the Texas Children's Houston Open. Oh, it's the 100 Navy Davis. There's their logo event. So, everyone just explain that to the kids with cancer at Texas Children's Hospital. Sorry guys, we don't have any nurses, and it's going to take longer when you hit that bell. But you can rest easy knowing that the golf tournament makes money. They're raising money. Well, I would say answer the question. It sounds like I would say no. I was really surprised about that point. That was actually a shocker. I didn't know that. But I mean, essentially, what you're saying is, first of all, with Steward Health, CEOs are spending crazy. They're spending money on yachts and skies. CarePoint, the CEOs are investing poorly. Obviously, hospitals are being closed down. Texas Children's Hospital, the CEOs are spending $65 billion on golf tournaments. What about all the bonuses from the CEOs? I mean, my gosh, man. Yeah, you answer the question. But, what I want to do now is I kind of went down a rabbit hole. I wanted to see, what is not in the headlines per se. So I accessed the most recent list of warn notices. And going down that rabbit hole, it led me to a couple interesting opinions on why some of these layoffs may be happening. Take a look, Jack. Starting with the warn notices, the most recent notices, actually, a couple of them are in healthcare services. The first one is 12 Oaks Foundation, which is senior living. The other one is USC Vertigo Hills Hospital. Now, what's interesting, Jack, is they're actually both in Los Angeles County, which was just like, oh my gosh, this is spreading. And I want to note real quick, as far as the USC, they're announcing a permanent closure, and the 12 Oaks Foundation up here is announcing permanent layoffs. Now, when I searched the news media, here's what I found. Starting with 12 Oaks, this is very interesting. So 12 Oaks to shut down for construction. So they're saying construction, the well-known senior living facility is a unique oasis in the community surrounded by trees and pathways. This is an area with individual rooms and throughout the property, small cabin-type residential buildings. All of the buildings will be knocked down and a new facility built from the ground up. The city of Glendale wants all utilities underground. So essentially, this has been through a roller coaster. They're saying these layoffs is because they're doing construction. Again, I'm wondering, why would they say the layoffs are permanent? Either way, it brought me to this next article, which is very interesting. This is on USC. You can track these layoffs. Layoffs are literally spreading. This was interesting, Jack. This is an opinion. Why are so many California hospitals closing their labor and delivery units? Just one paragraph here, Jack. Last week, Keck Medicine of USC announced the closure of USC Vertigo Hills Hospital services. They cited listen to this is insane. They cited a 40% decline in deliveries over the past decade. Now, this is within their community, and the resulting financial effect on the hospitals as a reason for the decision. While this justification appears reasonable at first glance, it conceals an unsettling trend with significant implications for maternal health. Jack, after reading that, after a couple of points that they brought up, do you think that we could say at least a portion of the layoffs are attributed to any massive decline in birth rates, or the fact that maybe senior citizens can't afford to get proper health care? Any merit to either of those opinions? On the seniors not being able to afford health care, I'm a little hesitant to jump into that. The demographics alone in the United States with the aging population, I think, is enough to support the population expansion. Honestly, I think the story about knocking down those small cabins, I think they're going to build a giant multi-residential monolith structure in there with smaller rooms so that they can cram even more people in there and help the property for more money. That's my uninformed guess at what's going on there. I'm having a hard time believing that it's for lack of demand, lack of affordability. There may be some truth to that. I think that's very real. Now, the issue about the declining birth rate, that is absolutely a thing. The birth rate in the West, really the whole global North, right? All of Asia, Europe, and North America, the birth rate has been well below the replacement rate for several years, including here in the U.S. The hospital I was born in and where my oldest daughter was born, shortly after my oldest daughter was born, they shut down their maternity ward, and my youngest had to be born in a different hospital because of that. We're just not having enough babies, and so hospitals that provide that service would be going out of business as there's just not enough babies being born to keep that staff there. Now, all that being said, the phrase is when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked, right? So you could argue the rising unaffordability in healthcare and the decline in the birth rates, that could be the tide going out. But that is not solely responsible for all of these layoffs and all of these hospitals being shut down. The problem is management has been swimming naked in the form of these sale-leaseback agreements with tens of millions for golf tournaments. And those last few, like USC, I haven't studied those in particular, but I'm sure if you dug into the books, you're going to find gross excesses from the leadership team. You're going to find cash burn that made no sense, if not someone outright looting the facility. So I think you probably have the tide going out, and you've got some people swimming naked there.
Yeah, do you think it's a 40% decline in births? Do you think that's just an outlier? Or do you think that's, because that seems high, am I wrong? Over the last decade, 40% decline.
Over the last decade, over the last decade, that might be a bit excessive, but over the last several decades, I think that's probably accurate. I mean, we're only having something like 1.7, 1.8 children per couple in the United States right now. The replacement rate is 2.1, 2.13, something like that. So, I mean, we've been well below the replacement rate for years here, and it is declining. That number may be a little aggressive, but I think it's at least in the right direction.
All right. Let me take the viewers now, Jack, to the most recent nationwide mass layoffs in healthcare, nurses, service providers right now by accessing this article. This is from fiercehealthcare.com. This is very interesting. This is a tracker, Jack, so I will have the links to all of this if you guys want to track. This is updated as of a couple days ago, September 23rd. Now, again, they're doing a tally of layoffs across the industry, so it's one of the only ones I've seen that is actually tracking this, Jack. But it's going to start by talking about Lifespan has confirmed strategic restructuring that has trimmed 20% of its executive positions. Okay, Jack, and that's going to save them $6 million. It goes on to talk about Optum in Baskin Ridge, New Jersey, laying off 160 workers. That's in addition to about 524 workers in California. So that's just a part of what's going on there. Also, here's CarePoint Health. We talked a little bit about that. I mean, massive layoffs with CarePoint, 2,600. We have here Samaritan Health Services confirmed it reduced its workforce by 80 positions in light of a variety of pressures, including inflation, cyber incidences, which is interesting, weather, a decline in volume in some clinical areas, and unfavorable payer reimbursements. And that's only 1% of the 5 hospitals in Oregon that they operate. This goes on to Southwestern Health Resources has laid off 129 Kaiser Permanente. Actually, will be closing an entire facility, a nursing home, massive nursing home with 249 layoffs. This is saying a steady decline of patients, but the underlying thing here is a shift to home-based care. So that would suggest, in my opinion, Jack, that is an affordability thing. But again, interesting that an entire facility that is a senior care is being shut down. Now here's another surgical hospital being shut down. They're laying off about 160 employees. Another place in California, Modesto, California, very interesting. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan laid off 64 workers as well, citing industry-wide cost pressures from drug claims and medical care fraud. I'm just kidding, Jack. It does not say fraud. It says medical care utilization. I added fraud because that's what's going on behind the scenes. Here's Texas Children's Hospital, mentioning again the 5% of the workforce being laid off, totaling about 1,000 jobs. Here we go as well with Healthlands on 171 worker layoffs in North and South Carolina. We have New York's
Trudeau wants to ban the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles by 2035. Let that sink in and ask yourself, how much is your tax bill going to increase? How much is your power bill going to increase to pay for all the subsidies, charging stations, power plants, transmission lines required for this ban and Trudeau's EV electric vehicle mandates? These costs are going to be huge. But the good news is that Canadians don't support Trudeau's ban on new gas and diesel vehicles by 2035. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation commissioned a alleged poll. The poll shows that about 6 in 10 Canadians oppose Trudeau's ban on new gas and diesel vehicle sales by 2035. Remove the undecideds, and more than 2/3 of Canadians oppose Trudeau's ban. Turns out, Canadians want to be able to buy gas minivans and diesel work trucks. And Canadians know that Trudeau's ban will mean higher costs, higher taxes, and higher power bills. Now let's just go over the numbers for a second. The power required for Trudeau's EV mandate could require 10 new Site C dams. Well, it took about a decade for Site C to comply with regulations and about another decade for Site C to actually get built. Or look at a report from Natural Resources Canada that shows that Trudeau's electric vehicle transition could cost up to $300 billion by 2040. Those are higher costs, and it means higher tax bills and higher power bills for you. Now remember, Trudeau wants to ban the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles by 2035. But make no mistake about it, that means you would end up paying higher taxes and higher power bills. The good news, though, is that Canadians don't support Trudeau's ban. Canadians are fighting Trudeau's ban. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is fighting Trudeau's ban on new gas and diesel vehicle sales by 2035. And you can join the fight too. Just head over to taxpayer.com, sign the petition, no ban on gas and diesel vehicles.
So you're already using ChatGPT, and while that's awesome, here's national news actually. California bans misinformation during the election, and it gets struck down nearly right away. But there's a hilarious Kamala Harris video that prompted the ban, and they're going to try to do this. They're coming for free speech everywhere. They're coming for free speech, absolutely 100%. And what else? Weird that China didn't get this kind of consideration. So yesterday, the speaker said, "Listen, the liberal corruption is a little bit. It's getting to be a bit much," he says, and he suspended all other government action until this corruption gets addressed. And documents are produced that have been ordered by the House and so on and so forth. And so that's an interesting situation to be in. China didn't even get that. I don't understand how we can have Chinese traders, and that's okay. Chinese traders trying to pass censorship laws. Hey, no problems, guys. But liberal corruption, that's a bridge too far. So, I mean, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. And maybe, I mean, this is the first cracks that I've seen, honest, real cracks that I've seen. Because even when Jagmeet Singh says we're tearing up the deal, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. There was nobody had a real push to unseat this government, to bring this government down at all. Nobody. And now I'm actually starting to see that movement, and I'll show that to you. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're starting with the Speaker of the House in Canada suspends all government action. Actually, first, this is a funny little faux pas that happened yesterday. And so he's practicing. You know what? Really, he's figured out the way the wind's blowing before the rest of the Liberals. And what's happened is he wants the Speaker job in the next session. That's what's going on here.
You take the floor when you're the Speaker. We're right on the sorry.
So the Speaker accidentally called Mr. Poilievre the Prime Minister, so very honorable Prime Minister. He's like, oh, so I love political faux pas. They're so much fun. Anti-taxer says, wow, all parliamentary business is paused, including debates on bills like C-13, online harms, C-65. I thought it was C-63. Is it C-63, the online harms bill? Maybe C-13. C-65 and C-293 and all sorts of everything else. All parliamentary business is paused, including blah, 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 blah. And so the Liberals cooperating with
Speaker Fergus's order to turn over evidence of corruption to the RCMP. Here is Andrew Scheer taking point on this. And there are certain sectors in the Conservative Party, and each one is functioning to hold their section accountable. And I mean, that's how shadow ministers work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But previously, almost everything has gone through the leader. In this situation, there are other MPs who are the experts on, like, I'm thinking about Larry Brock and the two Michaels, right? Michael Cooper. And so it's interesting to me how much of the cabinet and much of the shadow cabinet is being utilized by Poilievre. And this is an interesting turnabout. Is this kind of a weird prorogation, right? I mean, it doesn't kill all the bills on paper and things like that. Like, it doesn't end all government business, but everything's suspended. So it's kind of a weird quasi-prorogation. We'll see how it all plays out. Here's Andrew Scheer. It's 4 minutes, so we won't listen to the whole thing, but we'll listen to some of it. Here we go. Too fast. Oh, sorry. 9 years, Justin Trudeau, blah, blah, blah.
Cost or the corruption. The Speaker has just recently ruled that all House business, all government business must be put aside while members of Parliament consider Liberal corruption. First, we had the case of the Green Slush Fund, the SDTC fund, where the Auditor General found over $330 million funneled to Liberal insiders' own businesses. She found massive conflicts of interest. Basically, these Liberal appointed board members who made the decision as to which companies got money, taxpayers' money, from this fund, were funneling that money to their own businesses or to the businesses of their close friends. So the Auditor General has blown the whistle on that, yet the government refuses to hand over the documents to the RCMP. The House of Commons passed a production order demanding that all documents, all information that the Auditor General uncovered, plus any documents that might exist in any government department related to this scandal, be handed over to the RCMP. The government is refusing, and as a result, the House will be seized with this corruption matter until they hand over the documents. And then we have the case of the other Randy, where the senior Trudeau minister is alleged to have been sitting around the cabinet table while also involved in his own business's affairs. His business partner was summoned before a committee, then refused to disclose all the information, refused to name who the other Randy is, refused to hand over all the documents and answer the questions that were put to him.
So corrupt. And so the Speaker of the House has put an end to any other government business until these documents are surrendered. And I mean, what kind of advantage would you have if you were in the room making the decisions about PPE, mandating PPE, and you own a business, and you're like, like texting your buddy who is a co-owner of the business, and you're like, order all the masks we can. We're pivoting right now, buddy. Blanchette is mad. He is very upset, and Gov.exe says he's
also bullshit.
Johnny's. Anyway, Blanchette says Trudeau government acted. What messed me up is the Y and the F. I know, but still, anyway. Blanchette says the Trudeau government acted spinelessly by not providing the bloc with a clear answer. Blanchette says he will begin the process to force an election as early as next week. This is a little quiet, so I'll try to increase the volume, but here he is. He is saying the Liberals had a chance, and I mean, they squandered it. Here we go.
Why are you still
Why,
Mr. Blanchette, why are you still willing to work with the Liberal government when they voted down this motion? Is that not something signal and subscribe?
Let's understand things as they are. The government, I will let that for now, did not have the spine to provide us and Canadians and Quebecers with the answer. So they just want to get some more time and keep not deciding about anything. They might hope that they will go further than October 29th. They will not. So they have until a few days from now to go on with the Royal recommendation And if they do not, we will start as rapidly as next week to with other positions in order to get ready to the election. And I will tell you both in English and French that it is noticeable that the NDP voted in favor of this motion, and that we could have eventually to assume the consequences of such a vote if we get the next step without the government providing us and Canadians and Quebecers with what we want to have.
Right? And so there was a vote, and the Bloc wanted the government to support the vote, and it was for a 10% increase to old age pensions across the country. And the Liberals did not support the vote, and the Bloc is saying they're being sneaky snakes, and we're going to pursue everything that we need to pursue to go to election, and if we get to the next step without having the information that we need, that we've asked for. And so again, he's talking about more than one thing, but there's lots of things going on, right? And maybe the NDP, if they support this government, they're going to have to wear that into the next election. He threatens, right? And the Gazette says Tom Mulcair is suspecting, is Trudeau set to pull the trigger on prorogation? The option is back on the table. It could be a game changer if the Prime Minister follows up by stepping down as Liberal leader. It's interesting. That would change things a little bit. But who steps in as Liberal leader? Mark Carney. Mark Carney is not going to win an election. He's different than Trudeau, and he's a lot more like Pierre Poilievre, and so it'll be very two similar personalities, right? As the face of the party, if you will. So that'll be, I think, advantage Poilievre. Although it makes the Liberals look serious again, and they can throw off the Trudeau feminism nonsense, but they're not going to, because that's all the party has. All the party has is those division and lies, right? All the party has is climate change and gender ideology, and both are false. It's period. Like I don't think there's any argument that if you look at the facts of it, it's climate change is as valid as cutting someone's penis off and saying they're now a girl. It is not happening. Period. It just doesn't happen. Anyway, Tom Mulcair says the option is back on the table. Game changer, maybe. I'll just read it a little bit. For Canadian politicians, prorogation is the emergency brake you pull when your government train is about to run off the rails. Prorogation, simply put, occurs when a Prime Minister asks the Governor General to suspend Parliament for a time in order to hit reset. In practical political terms, it often serves to distract and delay when you're in deep trouble. Stephen Harper famously used it to save his minority Conservative government when the Liberals and the NDP signed an agreement to oust him. Governor General Michelle Jean was no fan of Harper, but she was bound by constitutional conventions to grant his request for prorogation. The inclusion of Bloc Québécois leaders Giles and Giuseppe at the agreement announcement turned out to be its downfall. He wasn't formally part of the deal, but had promised to support the new government that would result from the Liberal NDP entente. Harper played the separatist card skillfully, and the NDP Liberal quasi-coalition was soon dead in the water. So, yeah, I mean, politics is a rough sport, right? And you have to be playing the game in order to win. And so it's interesting because the last couple of Conservative leaders haven't been playing the game. They've been allowing Trudeau to set the pace. Poilievre seems to be trying to set the pace, and Trudeau seems to be playing catch-up, and it's catching up to Trudeau. He can't stay ahead of the scandals anymore. And so will his government falls? If his government falls, will he try a prorogation to save it, a la Harper, right, to get Jagmeet that pension? Or will he allow the government to fall? I think that would be poetic justice if Jagmeet missed his pension. But funny, right? Funny. We'll see. YEG Wave is talking about this. Now, this isn't really, this doesn't really have to do with federal government or anything like that. But I have to wonder where Danielle Smith is. Like, is she not aware of the 15-minute cities? Does she want Alberta to be the first jurisdiction in Canada to rezone? I mean, it already has happened, just happened. But does she want this to be rolled out? Could she stop it if she wanted to stop it? I don't know. She seems lackluster. She makes a lot of promises, but she doesn't follow through. Is that accurate? 50-50? Right? What's the completion rate on her promises? YEG Wave says Edmonton has approved a 15-minute city plan along with new district policies and ideas for 14 areas across the city. The 15-minute city is a concept in urban planning where essential services like work, shopping, education, healthcare, and recreation are accessible within a 15-minute walk, bike ride, or public transit trip from any location in the city. The 14 districts are named Central, Ellerslie, Horse Hill, Jasper Place, Mill Woods and Meadows, Northeast, Northwest, Scona, Southeast, Southwest, West Edmonton, West Hendahay, and White Mud. White Mud? The city plans to begin implementing the new policies and plans immediately. So, yay! 15-minute cities are here, and barely a whisper. You know, I was out last night doing grocery shopping, and I went to Costco, and the Costco entry used to be just held up your card and somebody checked it, kind of got waved through it. You know what it is now? Scan your barcode. Scan your barcode. The digital identities here. Costco is like upper echelon. Like the guy who owns Costco is a Democrat. He donates to Democrats. He donates to liberals, right? Like he's a very, very progressive kind of person. And the corporation is supposed to be progressive as well. And so this is the first salvo that I've seen in action in public. And I felt very conflicted about continuing to like, I went in and I got the thing that I needed and I went out and I was like, damn, like, oh, I feel icky, you know? And so it's coming. And like, what happens when you go to like the grocery store and Walmart says, to combat theft, you need this Walmart card to prove who you are and come into our store. Is that going to be okay? Like cheaper. It's such a, oh man. And like Costco, with the membership, you're already soft used to it, right? Like I walked in and I was like, oh my gosh, we're scanning things now? This is ridiculous. Like, this is not good. And how much time, I fear it's like the AI in police forces. This is a technology that the powers that be desperately want rolled out and normalized, and they're going to do it as fast as possible, right? So, it's not good. It's not good. And with these 15-minute cities, there doesn't appear to be anybody stopping it. So if we want to stop it, we need to come up with a new plan for how to stop it, because the current plan's not working. Not working by a lot. The food professor, let's talk about money and misuse of money, misappropriation of tax dollars, and so on. And the food professor says taxing groceries is immoral, full stop. And so it's an opinion piece in the Journal de Montreal and by the food professor himself. And I think we're getting closer to the point. I've said for a long time, if you get somebody who is patriotic in charge, if you get somebody who feels like it's their job to take care of the citizens in their jurisdiction, then if you take a look at the balance sheet and you say, what is the most important thing to make cheap or to make accessible, to make everybody's life better, you realize right away that energy and food, right? Like you make sure energy is cheap, then everything else is cheap, because like moving it's cheap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Getting it, filling up your tractor is cheap, harvesting your food is cheap, drying your grain is cheap, right? So all of these things are cheaper if the inputs are cheaper. And so when you add a tax to things, you add a cost to things, and that cost increases the price. And if you're poor, an added 100%, if something was $2.50 and is now $5, $4.99, that's a big increase and will remove your ability to be flexible and utilize your limited resources in an effective way, right? And so now we're seeing people who are in the establishment, because he's a professor at one of the universities, right, saying we need to stop taxing these inputs. It's immoral. It is, right? Like anybody with sense, anybody who cares about their citizens knows that if you tax the inputs, that's bad, super duper bad, super bad. And so I like that we're seeing these kind of cracks. I like that we're seeing people definitely questioning these things. And more people are questioning it too. Dan McTeague's highlighting this standing committee on finance back and forth. Pat Kelly says every truck on the road is paying up to $20,000 per year in carbon taxes. Canadian Trucking Alliance says this is grossly inflating the supply chain, meaning Canadians pay more for everything that's shipped by truck, and everything is shipped by truck. Dan McTeague says add the $30,000 a year per truck. Doesn't include, and the $30,000 per year per truck. I think it's $20,000 he's talking about here, but I haven't expanded this, so I'm not sure. Per trucker doesn't include the federal Liberals' clean fuel regulation, which is the second carbon tax for 20 cents a liter, or another $15,000 per truck per year. So we have an unbelievable amount of money being taxed and sent to the government on behalf of climate change nonsense that's just inflating the price of the inputs, and that's immoral. Damn well know it, right? And now these people are waking up to it, right? Up till now, they've been claiming the moral high road by saying we have to take from the people who have a lot to redistribute it to the people who don't. But now it seems like they're just giving it to their liberal insiders, right? And I've got a whole scam section here, but they're giving it to connected family, friends, or companies that they themselves own, right? Like, so they take our tax dollars and say climate change. I'm doing everything we can for climate change for our future, and then they say, "Hey, Randy, do you know a guy named Randy who's got a mask company? Yeah, do you want to have a couple $1 million? Because I've got all this money here. I can barely swim in my money bin, right? Like, I need to air it out a little bit, get some money out here." It's wild, and they just share it around, and it's so fraudulent, and people are finally waking up, right? But the good news with the government business being paused in order to investigate the government corruption, it means a pause on the moving forward, and like we talked about this already, but pausing the moving forward of C63 and the other ones, 293 and others, would be very, very beneficial, because those things mean the end of traditional free speech in Canada, what you and I consider what you and I would consider our right, what's covered by the Charter and so on and so forth. If you think it, you can say it, right? I digress. So we'll see. Brian Lilly is talking about how they're going to use net zero to bring companies and businesses in line, or basically be destroyed. Brian Lilly says of this National Post article, the National Post article says Mark Carney, yellow teeth, warned that net zero will mean significant stranded property assets. And that just means that the assets that people own that make a lot of money. So if you buy a building for like $4 million or $10 million or $100 million, whatever it is, and then you set the rent of all those floors, and the building then becomes an asset. So it costs $4 million to buy, and once you bought it, you carry the mortgage, but the mortgage is like, $800,000, whatever it is, whatever the mortgage is, but your rent is a lot more. So you're covering the mortgage, you're making, you own the asset, and so on and so forth. But now with everybody going to net zero, those assets don't have anybody renting them anymore, and those assets are frozen, and kind of, what do you do? Because there's all that money tied up in there, and it's not making money anymore, right? And so that's one aspect of this, the stranded assets. But the important one is highlighted by Brian Lilly. He says not only significant stranded assets in the buildings and the real estate, but this article talks about how banks will stop working with companies that the bank doesn't feel are green enough, and it's already happening. Interesting. So this part, Carney warned investors about banking on these deadlines slipping by. There will be people who either implicitly or explicitly think that these timelines are going to shift, or that somehow or other it's not going to become a binding constraint. But this is a big risk to take, he says, ... And then Dutch bank ING last month warned 2,000 of its biggest clients, including commercial real estate developers and owners, that it would stop providing them with financing if they failed to make sufficient progress on tackling their climate impacts. If it found that commercial real estate was a laggard compared to other sectors when it came to disclosing climate impacts. How long do you think before people step outside of the system that is forcing this nonsense? Like, if you're a big business, and I can't even imagine, like, just a big business that does big business, and some government lackey comes up to you and says, you're not meeting the climate commitments that we're promising, so we're not going to finance you. That may seem like a problem initially until you go buy the bank, or you buy enough Bitcoin to finance your own kind of loan and back and forth without all that ESG nonsense. Like, how long before people honestly step out? And if they step out, what's going to be the punishment? Because you need an incentive, but you also need a stick. You need a way to find them or bring them back in. They're going to get charged with fraud, right? Improperly trading or something like that. I don't know. But it seems like they need some other way to bring people back on side if they decide to step out of the system that is forcing this nonsense, because it is just nonsense. It's just taking control of businesses with taxes and over-regulation, and nothing else, absolutely nothing else. Daylight Freedom Foundation says, breaking, we already have programmable money that's tied to energy credits. The Duconomy, MasterCard, can shut off your access to money if you exceed the carbon limit. Check out the details. So that's interesting, right? So they can just turn off your access to money if they're like, oh, I think that that's voluntary. I don't think that you have to use this card. I think that you can tell it, like, I'm using this to limit my carbon, whatever. And it's like a feature, not it's a feature, not a bug. People ask for this, but they're just brainwashed, and they don't understand that climate change is a hoax used to steal our money. That's it. It's not valid. It's a complete hoax, totally 100% hoax. Here's Ryan Garrett said, everybody's making fun of Chrystia Freeland being a little on the bigger side, and I'm just happy she's not wearing the red dress anymore. I'll tell you honestly, if you go and sit in a lot of meetings, there's food everywhere. Like if you go to, I used to work in schools, and the people in schools are always on a weight loss challenge, because I guess sitting on a teacher's desk is fattening as well, I'm sure. I guess I used to work in schools, and I would get so many steps because you're always walking. Right? You're always walking. So I would have like 15,000 steps. Wouldn't even be a high day for me, like 20,000 steps, sure. So there's always food around. You go to a meeting with the principal or something like that. You go to a meeting with families or anything like that. You go to a meeting with ministers, right? You go to a committee meeting, something like that. The committee meeting starts at like 2:30, and by 4 o'clock, you're hungry or whatever, and they'll have a spread of like food that you can go and just grab. So like that's gonna impact, because most people don't understand that the amount of calories you eat show on your body, right? Like that's just it. If you overeat, it shows. Anyway, so she's not riding a bike, and she's eating too many calories, it seems, for her metabolism. And what else is this talking about? Ryan says Freeland is bragging about how the great advice they're receiving from Yellow Teeth Mark Carney and Stephen Polaz, while claiming as fact that the cons get their advice from Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson. Man, I can't wait for this party to disappear into obscurity. I think people would rather have Elon Musk. Like, I don't think that that's a smear, right? If somebody said Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson, well, Tucker Carlson is not really a benefit for financial advice. Elon's good for like business advice because of what he's accomplished. But I don't know, running a government, he's running a couple of very, very busy businesses, right? But running a government's got to be different, right? It's different, isn't it? Here's Chrystia Freeland bragging. Where is it?
From smart former Canadian central bankers like Mark Carney and like Steve Pelosi, who is doing some great work advising us on how to encourage Canadian pension funds to invest more in Canada. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, on that side of the House, they get their foreign policy advice from Elon Musk and from Tucker Carlson. They should be ashamed of themselves. The people of Ukraine certainly know what's going on.
Foreign policy from Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson. Really? That's interesting. Dan McTeague is responding to this. Holly Dolan says, underground economy comprises a third of Canadian trucking industry, Commons Finance Committee told. Black market operators dodge billions in tax and flout labor laws. So, please help us, says Canada Trucking. Yeah, like, I remember when people would make runs, when I was younger, like when I was 20 or whatever, we all used to smoke. And some of my poorer friends would make runs up to the reserve and go and buy cigarettes because they would get no taxes and it was super cheap, and you could get like 4 or 5 cartons for the price of 2 cartons or something. I don't know, there's something. And so this is the same, right? Like if you can, we were just talking about the price of taxes on trucks with the clean fuel standard, and some of the taxes you can't avoid, but some of them you can. And so the ones they can't avoid, is there black market gasoline? I would imagine there's black market gasoline. Is anybody getting into this? I'm not encouraging this, but it seems there's going to be a point where people say, why are we paying the government all this money? For what do they deliver? Like, these people deliver nothing but misery. Why are we paying them? I'm sure there's got to be a black market for gasoline. How would that even work? It's like you get in less trouble for selling black market gasoline than you would for selling raw milk, I feel. Dan McTeague says, Justin's Gems, no hint like using one's charitable status to avoid paying taxes. Let's start with companies operating out of temples, gurdwaras in places like Brampton and Surrey. So, it's even super easy to dodge the taxes. You just have to have a religious exemption. Wow. And I mean, Canada's pretty open with who can get a religious exemption. As long as you're not Christian, I mean, you're going. Michael Barrett says, Trudeau's minister expects Canadians to believe she's surprised about the Liberal government dropping $9 million on a New York City condo for Trudeau's media pal. This is like, they're trying to make a big deal. They're like, $9 million, I can't even believe they spent that much money. And they want to spend more money in Ukraine. right? Like, we spent $4 billion in Ukraine. What have we got from that, right there? And they're like, Jolie didn't even know about the apartment in New York. Can you believe that? And I'm saying, like, I feel like we spend a lot more money on bullshit wars and no accountability. $600 billion. Catherine McKenna, where's the money? $9 million. And this is the one they're focused on. It's a mystery, dog. You know, like, I'm not sure they're focused on the right things. Chinese traitors. I wanted Chinese traitors in the House of Commons who are trying to pass censorship laws election. That's the election I want. I don't want a carbon tax election. I don't give a rat's ass. I mean, I care about the carbon tax. And I care about the traitors in the government more, though. And I feel like other people might care about the traitors in the government more. And the fact that they're trying to cover it up. I mean, the cover-up's worse, right? Like, Watergate was the thing, but the cover-up, that was the thing that got them. And so it seems like all of what's happening is justification to get rid of these crooks. And yet we're arguing about a very small piece of the pie where we know where the money is and how it got there, et cetera, et cetera. And huge swaths of money are going big question marks. And like, it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to focus on that. So I'm glad that these guys are, picking things like orange juice, right? $16 orange juice. That's quite relatable. I guess people can associate with that. It seems like it's a strategy, but I feel like they're missing the big fish, right? Like they're getting, I don't even fish, so I don't even know fish analogy, but they're getting the small fish where there's big fish all over the place. They can get those big fish if they really try, but they're just not even trying, right? Or actively trying to get the small fish. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Gold is easy to invest in online. Gold. Choose your own path. The people you and I spend a certain amount of our lives railing against is in part because they are censorious bullies. They want to tell you and me and everyone else what.
You're clearly seeing them strike the ground. That is nothing by missile defense. There's also some shots like the one they're showing right now of many pieces in the air. Now some are claiming that that's the Iron Dome stopping the missiles, breaking them into pieces. But others are saying no, that's what a multiple missile strike looks like, where the missile arrives and has multiple warheads and then releases the warheads. But either way, it is now aggressively clear that Iran did actually hit Israel, and unlike the way Israel behaves, Iran is actually very reserved in their retaliation. They aimed at and struck military installations, military targets. On the same day that Iran hit Israel 2 days ago, Israel, or maybe the following day, Israel bombed an orphanage and killed countless children. So you see the difference in these two forms of battle, if you will. One is let's murder a lot of children. The other is we will strike military installations in order to retaliate against your terror attack across Lebanon, against your assassination of Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, and also an Iranian official was killed at the same time. So very different ways of striking. And here's another video of Tel Aviv on fire the other night. So this is obviously not a missile that was stopped from hitting Tel Aviv. So obviously what the IDF is saying is false. Thank you, 11th Hour, for the donation and for supporting the show. Really means a lot. So it's clear that Iran actually did strike Israel, and yet if you Google it, it was doing this research as to what actually has happened, as to what we should be learning about Iran's strike on Israel. As I was doing this research, I Google it because I like to see what Google's feeding you as well as everything else. And like the first 15, actually, it might even be more than that. I stopped scrolling because everything was first of all from mainstream media, as Google does, but they were all either ignoring or glossing over whether Iran had actually caused real damage or not. There was some acknowledgement of maybe some of the missiles got through, but it's very vague, and this is by design. And I don't have the image here, but Israel had also digitally covered up satellite imagery. I don't know if they're able to do this for all satellites, but apparently some of the most popular places that people will look for satellite imagery, like Google Earth and such, Israel's able to actually add kind of fake cloud cover, like digital cloud cover, to make it impossible to see what actually happened in these strikes. So anyway, I stopped looking on Google and went to other browsers like Brave, and many of their top posts are mainstream media as well. But if you keep going down, eventually you get like India Today, where you can actually get some truth as to what is happening on the ground in Israel. This article says satellite images confirmed, and this is after or they had a way around the digital cover, digital fake clouds Israel was using. Satellite images confirmed damage to Israeli airbase of F-35s, no widespread destruction as claimed. Some people trying to support Iran's retaliation were saying, Israel is done, they're crushed or whatever. I don't think that clearly does not seem to be the case. However, in a second I'll talk about how I don't know that destroying every F-35 was really the aim here. We'll get to that in a second. Ballistic missiles fired by Iran have damaged parts of an Air Force base that houses Israel's advanced F-35 fighter jets in its central eastern part. Images captured show damage to 2 aircraft hangars at the Nevatim Air Base in the Negev region, while one hangar appears completely shattered and another adjacent hangar sustained a partial hit. At least 2 craters appear to have been created by the impact of missiles at the airbase on the night of October 1st. Verified footage of the attack shows a volley of missiles falling on and around the airbase, and then they show the satellite imagery showing clear craters in several areas of the Nevatim Air Base. Also, there's a clear strike of the hangar. Now, we don't really know what's inside the hangar, so it could very well have damaged or destroyed an F-35. It's tough to know that. Satellite images do not show any damages to the jets. However, it is possible that 1 or 2 aircraft could have been damaged inside the hangar, so 79%. But again, the amount of effort to cover up even just this information is kind of impressive. You look at New York Times, you look at any of this mainstream media, and they'll make references to the missiles striking Israel, but they will not tell you anything as to the reality on the ground, as to whether this did any damage to Israel's fleets or their abilities to, take off and land, etc. But in terms of why this is still powerful, whether it was just small damage or not, is because this showed again that Iran is capable of getting through the quote-unquote Iron Dome. The term Iron Dome feels like the name of a professional wrestler who outside of when the cameras are off, he's a giant puss. I'm sure there are some of those pro wrestlers who are amazing in the ring, and then you're in the back room, and they're like, "Oh, don't punch me." That's what it feels like. There's the Iron Claw, the Iron Dome, and then Iran is clearly capable of getting through this. Some have called Hob in the comments and saying a tinfoil dome, others have called it the tofu dome. Anyway, but I think this showed that Iran can get through it, but it also showed Iran apparently has thousands, if not tens of thousands, of this type of missile, the hypersonic and others that can get through the Iron Dome, and they shot 180, 200 of them, or projectiles, but many of them were, I think, hypersonic missiles. But So they have countless number of these, and if they wanted to, it seems quite evident that they could utterly destroy these air bases. Apparently, according to Scott Ritter and others who have more official knowledge on F-35s, say that there are not that many places in Israel where an F-35 is capable of taking off from and landing in. It's not like the 1940s biplane. We can land in a cornfield. I don't think it really works that way. So, if Iran were to truly destroy these bases, then Israel's ability to launch and land F-35s, it seems, would be over. And so, this shows, Iran strikes showed, first of all, that they're capable of making a point without killing a bunch of children. Israel is not, apparently. Israel thinks no message gets through unless you bomb loads of children, babies especially. And so they're able to make a point without doing that. They're able to be reserved and fire only at military installations. But on top of that, they're able to get through the Iron Dome, that they can choose when they want to and where they want to hit Israel. Obviously, if they wanted to, they could have shot these at shopping malls. They chose not to because, yet again, if you really analyze the data on what's going on, Iran, like many times Russia has been to the United States, Iran is being the adult in the room. Iran is having their president has been killed. Their top general has been assassinated by Donald Trump and the Pentagon back a few years ago. Their other commanders have been killed. Their consulate in Syria was bombed by Israel. And all of these offenses, they don't go after Israel's command structure, not yet. They don't go after children. They don't try to create just mass panic across Israel. They have called it military installations. And for anyone who wants to go, well, those military installations are in a populated area. Oh, you mean Israel's using human shields? Is that what you're telling me? Israel put their military installations near civilian populations. Oh, okay. As long as we're in agreement that Israel's using human shields, I'm glad you guys have come to that realization. And here is the extremely psychopathic New York Times.
I think that's what I heard.
And this was one of their articles today, titled, "We absolutely need to escalate Iran." Yeah, that's what we need. That's absolutely what we need. And Alan McLeod is right, absolutely right. He said, delete your subscription to the New York Times. And it is horrific how much the New York Times pushes for war, death, and destruction, and manufactures consent for that war, death, and destruction. And it's just so horrific. Bloomberg ran a slightly more thoughtful article about how, because apparently the U.S., some of the U.S. and Israeli, ruling sociopaths are considering striking Iran oil facilities as a response. And Bloomberg is saying striking Iran's oil facilities would spark a dilemma for Israel. And a shit show for the rest of the world. Because hitting the oil facilities, the sector a mainstream of the country's economy, and its international power certainly offers a wide range of potential targets. However, somewhere between a half and two-thirds of Iran's oil is exported, mainly to China, and China would then turn to other countries to get the oil, such as Russia, thereby giving Russia a lot of money. So it kind of would backfire to the whole hegemony thing that the U.S. is involved in. But on top of that, oil in general would shoot up. Plus oil in general, you'd probably have many Middle Eastern countries that export oil that are in OPEC, no longer wanting to export to the United States or Israel. I don't know if they export to Israel currently, but and this would cause oil prices to shoot up. And what happens in the United States when oil prices shoot up? Oh, Americans, the average working Americans start to get upset. And they start to do things like vote politicians out and march in the streets and get angry and think that maybe the ruling elite need to beat the guillotine sometime soon. And, in the dark alley, where those kind of things go down. So there would be a shit ton of blowback if Israel starts blowing up Iran's oil facilities. But then again, there is no level of idiocy that they won't stoop to, that Israel won't stoop to, that the U.S. government won't stoop to. There really is no level of idiocy that is too much. Anytime you think, well, they wouldn't do that, they wouldn't commit a mass terror act violating all levels of international law, blowing up thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies in people's pockets, killing children, doctors, nurses. They wouldn't do that because that would harm the global economy. It would harm the whole market economy in terms of what people are buying and where they're sourcing it from. Yes, they would. They're that dumb. They're that dumb and that horrific and that sociopathic. Yes, they would. So at every level, it's just like, wow, they cannot be. There's no level of dumb that they won't grab at. They're like it's candy coming out of a pinata. Oh, he's more dumb. There really isn't. Here it is. So I didn't watch. I proudly say I did not watch the vice presidential debate because I cannot stress and just to give you, I like to get down to the core level of reality. I know many of your independent media people like to dance on the surface and act like that's all they need to talk about. I like to get down to the core level. The core level reality is the presidency doesn't matter nearly as much as we pretend it does. Okay? Somewhere between 90 and 90% of all the structural issues in the United States of America and our empire stay exactly the same no matter who's in that goddamn office. So the president doesn't matter as much as you think. The vice president matters zero as much as you think, unless the vice president is the acting president, such as Dick Cheney was acting president while George Bush walked out there and smiled like a big dumb cowboy. But in general, vice president matters almost not at all. So on top of that, you have the fact that we don't actually have a democracy, right? Most of you know this. I mean, we have a republic, supposedly, but we don't have that either because the elections are rigged in about 14 different ways. Some for Republicans, some for Democrats. But again, the two parties agree on 99% of structural issues in this country. So what does it matter if one rigs one thing and one rigs another? Most of the gerrymandering is rigged for Republicans. Most of some of the election machinery is rigged for Democrats. You've got various voter purging, especially black voters that are purged in a lot of states. That's rigged for Republicans. You've got other aspects that are rigged for Democrats. Money rigs both sides, so you have to be a super duper billionaire or have one in your pocket in order to fund any of this shit. So all this shit's rigged. So that's yet another level of how little the vice presidency matters, and the vice president's election matters, and that all of that, how little this matters, you get to this debate that couldn't matter at all. So that's why I didn't watch it. I'm sorry to let you. But I'm going to play a clip because I've seen one or two clips just to show you how. And here's the thing: I'm not going to spend any time debunking Billy Bob Vance or whatever. I mean, Vance isn't even his real name, so whatever. JD Billy Bob. He changed his name to Vance because he thought it sounded more powerful, I guess. JD Pepsi or whatever his last name is. I'm not going to debunk because he's an idiot. Like you should know, he's funded and created by Peter Thiel. JD Vance's positions on everything change by the week. It really just whoever he's talking to, he tries to say the things that'll make them happy or will give him more money or more votes. So, ignoring all of that, I'm going to play 40 seconds of Tim Walz, and show you just how much garbage about Israel this guy can spit in just 40 seconds. 40 seconds. There he is.
In this situation, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Even in the question, just to debunk the question, it can't be a preemptive strike if they've already struck. They've already struck. They have already killed Iranian generals. They have already killed the top Iranian general from the Pentagon did, Soleimani. They have already killed another Iranian commander in the strike that killed the top of Hezbollah, because he was meeting with the Iranian commander, and so he was killed. So you can't, and Israel's been assassinating Iranian scientists for years. You can't have like 14 assassinations of Iran and then say, should Israel preemptively strike Iran? They've already struck Iran in like 12 different ways. How can it be preemptive? That aside, let's hear more.
Thank you for the training home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Austria.
Nope, not where it started. Okay? It's been going on for years and years. Israel killed, before October 7th, killed thousands of Palestinians a year, often. Israel blows up thousands of buildings. They kill tons of journalists, often. And on top of that, Israel had 5,000 hostages before October 7th. So this whole let's remember when it began, October 7th, is bullshit. And it's designed to get you to think that's when history began, October 7th.
Austria massacred over 1,400 prisoners.
Nope. 1,400. The only people who ever said 1,400 were the initial numbers coming out of the Israeli government on like the day of. The Israeli government has now decreased that number of people killed on October 7th from 1,400 down to, they're now in the 1,100s. I don't know the exact, maybe it's 1160, which is not a way to say that number. 1,160, something like, I don't know. But it's in the 1100s. And so no one is saying 1,400. Tim Walz is, except for Tim Walz. Tim Walz is saying they killed over 1,400. No one's saying that. So even just that is bullshit. But also, this is not what history began. Okay? In order to understand why October 7th happened, you have to understand everything before October 7th. You have to understand what it's like to live in an open air prison. We'll skip it.
Iran, Israel's ability to defend itself is actually
not defending itself. It's not defending itself. Murdering 40,000 people, 70% women and children.
fundamental. It gets hostages back. Fundamental.
Is it fundamental for Hamas to get their now 10,000 hostages back? The Palestinians? Is that fundamental? Oh, no. Oh, it's only fundamental because they're being tortured. We know they're being tortured. And we actually now have a very official report saying not only does Israel torture these people, but part of the torture, some of the time, is our word. It infuriates me that, if you're saying it on YouTube, they'll not show your video to people. But Israel's using sexual assault as a form of torture. And in fact, we saw, I believe it was video. Yeah, we saw video, and I showed it on the show of the Knesset, the parliament, debating as to whether it was okay to R-word prisoners as torture. And they voted it was. It's fine to sexually assault innocent Palestinians because you feel like torture. It's just the how morally bankrupt these soulless human beings are is really
And the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Oh, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Huh. I wonder how there ended up being a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. How was that? It just a fig tree didn't have a good season? Is that why people are hungry in Gaza? Is it just not rained enough? Is that why people are struggling in Gaza? Or is that they're locked in a prison that's being bombed with enough explosive tonnage to create Hiroshima bombs? That could be it. Even though if you look on a map, Gaza's tiny, 25 miles, 5 miles wide, and yet every inch of it has been bombed, equating to over three Hiroshima bombs. And I think that might be why it's a humanitarian crisis. Of course, he doesn't say that. He just says resolve this vague, resolve the humanitarian crisis.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States.
Now, that is one of the most horrific things he says, and that's why this clip is so viral, because he says the expansion, the going beyond where they are right now, of Israel and their proxies is absolutely necessary. It is absolutely necessary for a genocidal state, a genocidal apartheid state of Israel, to steal more land, to grab more hostages, to grab more resources, to expand, to get more weaponry. Like, and people were talking about Tim Walz, again, vice presidents don't matter, but they were talking about him as if he was the more measured one in the Harris Walz duo. I think she just picked him because, Trump's big thing for the last election, like part of the reason he won, the election he won, was because he kept saying build a wall. So I think Harris just figured if she had walls, that she'd win. Pretty certain that's why she chose this military. Well, I got walls. He can't win on walls. Trump can't win on walls. If I got the walls, I get the walls. He can't get the walls. We have all walls. Walls fix things. But again, the reason this clip is going viral is because he said the expansion of Israel is absolutely necessary. Totally unhinged. This is the garbage rhetoric. These lunatics are pushing for. Okay, I am going to get to some other stories about the 5 chemical catastrophes across the United States in 1 month that barely get talked about. I'm going to talk a little more about the damage from Hurricane Helene and what that means. All that's coming up. It would be awesome if you guys could hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe on both YouTube and rumble.com/LeeCam. If you have trouble finding any of these things, you can go to my link tree. Let's see if I can put the link tree on the screen. You can go there, linktree.com/LeeCam, and find all my stuff. I also just added up there. I want to see if I haven't been able to find it yet on Spotify, which is why I haven't announced it, but it should be up there in not too long. And I still can't find it on Spotify, but it's a new podcast called Just Comedy, which is just my comedy segments. And it's, obviously what I do here is I do analysis, I throw in some comedy here and there, but I do analysis, bring you what's going on in this world and what the mainstream media won't tell you, and that's what I do on this kind of daily basis with these live streams. But I wanted a place that you guys, you're in your car and you want to laugh or whatever, get my comedy segments kind of all in one place. So the first 2 episodes of Just Comedy is called. Get what I did there? Like Justice Comedy? Like Just Comedy? Amazing. Oh my God, that's so clever. Anyway, it should be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts soon. Hopefully not long, but there is a link to listen to it online, and that's at my link tree. linktree.com/LeeCam will take you to the listen page where you can listen to it. So just remember that one, linktree.com/LeeCam. Sir Everlaw says he just got it. Thank you for coming late to the party. I get the joke. You know what? Look, I wrote it. I didn't get it for the first 5 minutes. I just stared at it. And I was like, this must mean something. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to go through 5 chemical catastrophes that have just happened in the United States. And, of course, I'll get a little bit of deeper meaning behind this. Just happened in the United States. It's all within a month. This is residents in Akron, Ohio, this is the article after it's over, are able to return to their homes after a large chemical fire prompted an evacuations. Residents have been informed they can return to their homes after fire involving several hazardous materials and SMB products chemical plant prompted an evacuation in Akron, Ohio. Okay, that was September 5th. We've got people in Akron, Ohio fleeing for their lives because chemicals are on fire. And as we saw with East Palestine, Ohio, is that the United States, the EPA, etc., will do things like say it's safe to be there. They'll burn off chemicals that are dangerous to inhale, even after they've done burning them up, and the majority can remain there. And these palaces are still getting cancer, they're still getting nosebleeds. It is actually horrific what we've done in these palaces. And the U.S. deal with all this, like, on this, the printer paper budget of the Pentagon, like the tiniest drip of the Pentagon's budget afford to give all those people health care. Buy them all out of their houses, like triple the prices, so they can buy a house, a nice house somewhere that's not toxic. And yet, we don't do it. We don't do it because these people, these ruling elite, do not care about you at any level. They would rather you sit there and get brain tumors and them tell you it's safe to be there than just unlock a tiny bit of the Pentagon's budget. Thank you, Jay Tolbert, or I don't know if it's the French, Jay Tolbert, over on Rumble for the donation. Jay Tolbert says, thanks, Lee, for all you do and get the truth out. I appreciate that. And thanks for Jason Elliott for the donation. More solidarity to you, Jace. Really appreciate it. That's okay. Jay says, sorry, it's not much. That is all right. I appreciate all solidarity of all kinds. Okay, that was Akron, Ohio. Then, this next one we actually brought to you when it happened a couple of weeks ago. Energy transfer pipeline explodes in La Porte, Texas. Natural gas and liquids pipeline owned by Energy Transfer caused fire in La Porte, Texas on Monday morning, the company said. And, of course, I'm sure they're not telling anyone to leave their homes, because why not just let them say they get cancer 7 months later? You've got that explosion. Then you've got Chevron plant in Geismar, Louisiana. 2 injured in a hydrogen gas explosion with serious burns sent to the hospital. Explosion is the Chevron plant sent 2 workers to the hospital. Witnesses reported hearing a loud explosion followed by fire. Emergency responders, including firefighters and airmen, quickly arrived on the scene. And that's in Geismar, Louisiana. I don't know anything about Geismar, but I know that Louisiana, perhaps more than any other state in our union, is known for having cancer alleys, basically whole areas of the state that are heavily, are cancer hotspots because of all the chemicals there, because of all the chemicals pumped into the air, because there's so little regulation in Louisiana. But on top of that, and cancer alleys fit under this description, they have corporate sacrifice zones, which are basically places that corporations go where they decide it doesn't matter what happens. We can pollute it, we can pump chemicals into the air, destroy the area. It doesn't really matter. These corporate sacrifice zones. They just let these people suffer. And one of the reasons that people live in these corporate sacrifice zones is because they're more affordable. So these are usually struggling people. These are also, if you actually read the studies and read the articles about it, the corporate sacrifice zones are it's almost exclusive. It might be exclusive, but they are heavily in non-white areas. It is in areas that tend to have indigenous people living there, Native Americans. It is in areas that have Black people and Hispanic people living there. Almost never is it in heavily white areas. And you might go, well, why is that? Is that because they literally want to harm Black people? No, it's, some of them might, but no, the real reason is because Black people, indigenous people, have more or less political power in our country than nice little white areas. And so when the political power is approving these things and the companies are asking for these things, they go to the area where they go, well, they're not going to have much of a fight. They're not going to, there's not a lot of people in a poor black area call up the governor, call up the state senator, and say, you gotta stop this plant from coming in here. You gotta stop this Teflon plant from destroying our waterways. They don't have that phone number. That phone number's not given to them. They don't have dinner on a regular basis with those people. So that's what corporate sacrifice goes on in this country. And I'd be surprised, honestly, if there's even one that's in a like heavily white area. But I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's just far less likely. And look at what they did with Dakota Access Pipeline. Dakota Access Pipeline, right? The big fight standing on it. It was initially supposed to go through whatever March or I don't know. But anyway, it was supposed to go through the big city, and then guess what? The people with some political power and the white people were able to fight it off, and then they were like, okay, we'll route it around and we'll route it through, the Native American areas. So they're not going to be able to fight us. All right, let's get to a couple more. This is all in 1 month. Evacuation order now lifted for area of styrene leak near Cleves, Ohio. This is another one in Ohio. I don't know what it is with Ohio. Maybe Ohio has a corporate sacrifice. That's why there's so many leaks there. Evacuation and shelter-in-place orders have been lifted after a styrene leak at a Cleves rail yard Tuesday afternoon. Of course, East Palestine, also Ohio. And again, just because they, here's a video of it, just because they announce that, like, oh, it's fine, you can go back to your home, it doesn't actually work. I mean, they get away fine in East Palestine. Like I said, people a year and 2 years after that horrific train crash are still getting headaches and nosebleeds in East Palestine. It is not resolved. And I think I was one of the few shows, one of the few live streams to bring you that amazing leaked memo that Savage Joy got access to. She's done amazing work on East Palestine, and she got access to the internal EPA email where they found that they discussed the fact that they knew the EPA and the Biden administration have the ability to give health care to entire states. It's in our laws. Biden, the administration would write a thing, write a signing memo, write a executive action, and that it could say everybody in East Palestine is free health care. And it'd be done. Wouldn't even cost them. And the law allows them to do that as part of the Social Security Act. But it says that if a city or an area is hit by an environmental factor that impacts everyone, then the government has the right to give them free health care. And it's only been done in one city, Libby, Montana, because of asbestos mining, and because they have a powerful senator who at the time was able to do them and all that. But it could be done all the time. You don't want to help. They don't give a shit about you. I think I need a button that just plays that. They don't give a shit about you. I just need to, like a morning radio show. I just push that. They don't give a shit about you. And we can just do it over and over again. My motto. Here's another one. Shelter is the last one. Shelter in place order for more than 90,000 Georgia residents was lifted after a chemical fire. Reported on Monday. even if these companies did something wrong, let's say they failed to, take safe measures with their styrene, what's the fine gonna be? $1 million, some tiny amount, some parking ticket for them. It's borderline meaningless. The main reason they try not to have this happen that often is because they're afraid that it would go past their brand. That, honestly, is probably the only reason you don't see this never daily week. But corporations owning everything, and if you get to actually a deeper level, I know this is good. For those of your regular watchers, this is just gonna blow you on the top of your head. This is gonna you gotta poke yourself straight through your underpants right here when I say this. At the core of it has to do with capitalism. It has to do with the fact that money rules everything. And guess what? Giving even 10,000 people, I'm talking large numbers of people, giving 10,000 people cancer that they don't find out about for 5 years, or even just years, it'll probably never be tracked back. It'll probably never cause a stir. It'll just ruin their lives and the lives of their family members. But that's how capitalism works. It's profit now. Companies getting rich now. There is no concern for humanity. As I said before, there's so concern for humanity. It seems like nightmares about humanity and about the people treated dead, about the people that go out there. You see so that kind of concern will not rise up the ranks of these people. I'll tell you all. So the guy doesn't give a flying about average people, about innocent people cleaning their shit, drinking their water. He's the one who rises up the rank. He's the one who gets to the top. And, it would be incredibly rare, but if you take that top spot, and all of a sudden you flip, all of a sudden you change, all of a sudden you became a class trader, and you said, you know what, we need to lose millions of dollars by making this stuff safer, by not harming people. We need to give out, millions of dollars in restitution to all the people that breathe this toxic chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. If you have that switch, not staying in that CEO role, not staying in that boardroom, next day you're going to be going, why does my key card not work? Hey, Betsy, my key card doesn't seem good. Did they change the key card? Oh, no, you got it. Betsy, could you? Betsy, Stan, could you let me? That's what happened. And at the root of it, it's the system. At the root of it, it's capital. All right, I want to jump to, this was pretty exciting. Julian Assange getting some due credit. I showed some of his speech the other day. Oh, by the way, everyone, please click thumbs up, click share, click Skippy Magoo or whatever. Click whatever buttons you can click that are good. Don't click thumbs down. But take a Sharpie marker and cross out on your screen, on your phone or whatever. Cross out the thumbs down. Just use a Sharpie. I think that's the best way to do that. And thank you again for all you threw in a couple of bucks in the super chat. It really does help. Really does. It's really amazing. And patreon.com/BKM. You've got good machines. But here is Julian Assange at the EU. He spoke at the EU, and I showed some of the clips the other day. But I think I brought it to you before this happened, or maybe before I found out. But either way. The Council of Europe's Parliamentary Assembly voted to confirm that Julian Assange was a political prisoner. And I know this may sound like the audio, there's just that clapper. And I know this may sound like obvious to you, where you go, yeah, of course he was a political prisoner. But the reason this is somewhat big news is this is coming from a largely pro-U.S. These are the U.S. Servant boys in the EU. And yet, even they have acknowledged that this was a political prisoner. Julian Assange spent over 12 years in confinement. It's actually across the national states of the United States, the EU. Pretty incredible that they voted. The European Parliament's Assembly voted that he is or was for many years a political prisoner. It's also a big FU to Britain as well. Obviously, even if they're both the U.S. and Britain. And anyway, just more exciting news about Julian Assange. Okay, I want to bring you some stuff about Helene. And also, if we have time, some of the worker strikes that are going on. But this is, so you guys know about Hurricane Helene, and obviously once again, it's non-stop coverage about the damage and everything, because it's, it's damage report, but they largely leave out the connection to climate crisis. They may occasionally have a little mention, like a verb that accidentally goes into climate crisis. They didn't mean to. They like the other anchor, the news part, and they'll say climate crisis. Well, they won't say crisis, they'll say climate change. That sounds soft, doesn't it? That sounds nice. Oh, I love it. Climate change sounds like when you go to your thermostat and change it from 72 to 3. You're like, I feel like that climate change feels nicer. It sounds nice and sweet. But no, it's people floating down rivers, riding on top of their house, like it is lives destroyed. So obviously, we have well over 100 people, I think, in the 140s now, but they believe many of the people that were killed, we won't find out about for many days and not weeks. But anyway, hundreds of people killed by Hurricane Helene and all the flooding. The highest number in North Carolina. Asheville is struggling. For those of you and friends in Asheville, right? But here's some of the damage of climate crisis that no one's contemplating or thinking about. Climate crisis can also impact things like your devices, like your ability to just turn on the escape box and pretend this world is fine. This article, Helene took out a North Carolina town the entire tech world relies on. This is a tiny 2,000-person town, and it's been utterly destroyed by Hurricane Helene. And I did not even know of this town, and I didn't know of its connection to the tech world, as I think many of you probably don't. It's a town called Spruce Pine, and it could have a massive impact to the entire global semiconductor industry. Spruce Pine is one of the only places in the world to mine high-purity quartz. Mineral is an essential ingredient of chips and countless products, including medical devices, solar panels, cell phones, and powering the latest tech craze, artificial intelligence. It's difficult to underscore the significance of Spruce Pine, a town of only 2,000 people, for its charming downtown and blossoming art scene to the global economy. It is one economics editor said it is rare and unheard of almost for a single site to control the global supply of one crucial material. And if you want to get high purity quartz, the kind you need to make those crucibles without which you can't make silicon wafers, it has to come from Spruce Pine. While there are other places to find materials, such as Russia and Brazil, this mountain town has the highest quantity of the highest purity. A few weeks of shutdown is not the end of the world. However, longer than that would throw the industry into crisis. And I found this interesting because this shows the ramifications of the climate crisis and like no one even thinks about. Like the fact that one small town in North Carolina that you've never heard of, that you've never been to, that no one ever talks about, ends up underwater because we can't get our shit together to behave like goddamn adults and actually change this world for the better and it's underwater, and therefore you stop being able to get phones and solar panels and so many other things we rely on, and processing that allow for AI, etc. Get hung up. And we're going to see this again and again and again. All the Silicon Valley areas that are making forest fires in California, massive droughts that can have implications. And yet, here you have the U.S. government, the administration, saying, first of all, they don't need to send more aid to these areas because they don't have the money. They don't have the money to help people. We have billions and billions. And what's the number now of how many billions of dollars we send to Ukraine? But no, I can't send any to North Carolina. I can't send any to Florida. Just let them struggle. But more importantly than that, they're making no effort to shift for climate crisis. And I'll just throw in my broken record moment as always, because I'm the only one. I'm the only one I hear saying this. Maybe I'm not, but I'd love to hear who else is saying this. That the reason the U.S. has no intention of shifting away from fossil fuels is because it's largely because it's conventional dollar. The world shifts away from fossil fuels. Our dollar is. So there's that. This video, Adam McKay posted. Adam McKay's been on fire recently. I love a lot of what that guy does. But he says, remember that as you watch this video, North Carolina underwater, remember that the governor of North Carolina still will not declare a climate emergency. And our news media almost never questions officials about it. Isn't it time to get angry? And I know if you don't see the podcast, you can't see this, but it's someone taking a whole movie. They're up to it's above their waists. They're basically up to their necks in water. Their entire house is underwater. And they don't know what to do. I mean, they're just sitting there because they're not sure where else to go. And the water is up to their necks. And you can climb up onto your roof, but climbing up onto your roof is not guaranteed safety. This is, just ignore this. Just act like this is somehow normal. It's absolutely not normal to have this level of weather-related crises across this country. Okay. I'm the same. I will during the plan, I will bring you information on the port strike tomorrow and workers fighting back in various ways across this country. But I need to wrap up for today. Thank you all you who supported the show. The amazing if you come over to GetYourTheCamp or thecamp.net. But also, free podcast. A brand new free podcast called Just Comedy. And it's not, I couldn't find it on Spotify yet, but it should be there. It's not long, but you can listen to it. First two episodes are up. You can listen to it right now at linktree.com/thecamp. Just click on the link there. Get there of the Just Comedy Podcast. linktree.com/thecamp. It's a free podcast, and obviously, once it's on Spotify and everything, I'm going to ask you guys to like things like whatever Spotify lets you click, star, share, whatever Spotify lets you do, so that it can hopefully build. And I just thought it'd be nice to have a place where we just do my comedy stuff. And, when you need a break from the play-by-play of this fudged up world. Fudged up world would actually be a lot of fun. Just have fudge everywhere. And be like, we have climate change becomes fudge related. We're up to our next fudge. I feel like it would make drowning, for example. It would definitely make riding down a Fudge River on your house. It'd be tough to be that upset if you were riding down a Fudge River on your house. Just saying. I mean, I suppose it depends on the type of fudge, whether you like fudge, but there's some things, there's some factors we can work out later. And I think we can, or all of the options better. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
artistic talent that you don't really get to see. So to keep solidarity with the president.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, we have one of the funniest shows on television, our nights. I know that's being I want to say, I was getting that pretty cool. This is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same booth with you. And I'm sure.
That's so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to do things. And so it takes shows like your show and
It is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother. So it's just a theory that people should behave this way. They don't have to each other. Sir George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on. Keep fighting.
Yeah, this is a very sort of, admittedly it's 2,000 years old, but a very sort of a vibrant call to arms, an urgent sense that, oh my God, we're living in an atrophying and dying ideology. We must become alive with Christ. We must change the world. And even the accounts that are given in there are accounts of people jailed and on trial. Now it sort of feels overtly and literally political.
Hey everybody, I've got a chance today to continue my ongoing conversation with Russell Brand. I want to talk to him today about the collective unconscious and about what it is, because I think we now understand what it is. I'm talking to him about sacrifice as the basis of community, about the distinction between authority and power and logos and power, about the danger of the use of power, about the necessity of the story, about how all that's played out in his own life, about the proclivity of the modern self to identify itself with its whims and desires and passions, and the inevitability that that identification turns into something that closely approximates worship. The idea that something should has to supplant that for maturation to take place and for society itself to stabilize and remain productive and abundant. We talk about the call to adventure as a variant of the establishment of relationship with God. We talk about the burden that Christ left on his followers, his death, all of that. So, if that's what would you say? Winds your clock. Well, this is the discussion for you. So good to see you, Russell. Thanks for agreeing to talk to me today.
It's a great joy to be in your company. Thank you for having me.
So I want to run some ideas by you, and I want you to tell me how they echo for you personally and also philosophically. So I think I've figured out what the collective unconscious is.
Finally.
Well, I've been thinking about these large language models and about what they do, because they obviously mimic human thought at the verbal level quite spectacularly. Now, of course, the woke ideologues have done everything they could to muck them up spectacularly right from the beginning, and we're going to pay a big price for that. But there's still something there that's very, very telling about how we think. So let me lay out the idea, and you tell me what you think about it. So what these models do is map the statistical relationship between you might say markers. So imagine that you can tell the difference between a word like, imagine a word mint, which isn't a word, but it's kind of a plausible non-word. And it's a plausible non-word because the statistical relationship between the letters mimics the likely statistical relationship between letters in a real English word. So it's much more of a word than Q, N, Z, T. Okay, so now there are statistical regularities between letters that enable us to identify words. And then there are statistical regularities between words in phrases that make sense. And then there are statistical regularities between phrases in sentences and sentences in relationship to one another. And then, say, within paragraphs, and then paragraphs in relationship to one another. And the large language models are trained to map all that. So what that implies, obviously, is something like any given idea is statistically likely to exist in relationship to a certain set of other ideas and not distal ideas. And so if I throw an idea at you, I'm also throwing a network of associated co-ideas at you at the same time, and then out farther in the penumbra are even more distantly associated ideas. And more creative people are going to be able to leap from the center to the distal ideas. We already know that from studying creativity. So the large language models map the statistical association between sets of ideas. That's what we're thinking about. You can imagine the same thing happens with images. So if you bring to mind the image of a witch, you're much more likely to bring to mind the image of a cauldron